Don't touch that chainsaw. Don't touch that chainsaw. Told you not to touch it. Didn't. By now you've seen my cringe-inducing video that I put up for April 1st back when I was a Christian running a channel called Infinite Hope, and I made this video where I used a comedy clip where the comedian says, you know, if an atheist knocked on your door, they would just tell you to go back to sleep. And the idea that I was invoking as Infinite Hope was atheists need to refute this idea that you could just sleep in if atheism is true. There's really nothing to tell you. Here's a clip from me back in the past, and then I'll tell you why I'm wrong now. But I'm telling me from past. Here we go.
And he is saying if atheists came to your door, they wouldn't really have much to tell you. They wouldn't tell you about anything, or that they would just say, don't worry about it, go back to bed, there's nothing to worry about.
Actually, that's not really true. There's plenty to worry about, and I think that if atheists did go door knocking, there's plenty that they'd have to tell people. First of all, that if they believe in a God, they're probably believing in something without any evidence. Yes, there's social pressures and religion, but if you dig, the evidence is just not there. There's no archaeological evidence that backs many or most of these claims. There's nothing empirical. There's nothing testable. The sort of evidence that they can produce is historical, traditional sort of things. And those don't work when you're trying to prove that something magical happened in the past. This evidence that they think exists doesn't really exist. And so when you ask for evidence, often you'll get an argument, which isn't evidence. Now, people are quick to counter and say, well, arguments contain evidence. Great, then just give me the evidence. Well, the evidence is that things had a start. Well, not really. Well, I mean, the universe had a start. No, we don't know that quite yet. But I mean, but if you put this analogy, no. Look, why don't we just stick to what's known? The scientific method is also something I think many atheists could teach if, of course, people were willing to listen and learn. And sadly, many people aren't. They're not only proud of their ignorance, but they strive to stay ignorant. Not all people, but there's some. So there's plenty an atheist could say if indeed they went door knocking. It's just that atheists aren't trying to deconvert anyone. Despite my name, Deconverted Man, because it's not deconverted you, it's...
And that is a concept that I think is worth meriting. That you can just sleep in with atheism. You don't have to concern yourself that there might be a God, that there might be a life after death, that you should have to prepare yourself for these realities.
Honestly, I don't think that there's anything that we could possibly do that would prepare us for a God being real. In the sense that if it revealed itself to all of humanity in a way that couldn't be mistaken and told us all about itself, how it works, what it wants, what it doesn't want, etc., that would be just completely and utterly something that we could not hope to prepare for. Especially if every religion's wrong and it's something like nothing we ever even possibly considered. Many people would, in fact, I think, doubt that it was God, and they would say, no, you're not the real God, this is a test. Skeptics would, of course, have their problems, scientists would have questions, everybody would freak out, and there might be mass panic and riots. I mean, just look at the current virus that we're dealing with and how people are kind of going nuts about that. I mean, I'm glad that it's contained as much as it is, but still, people are freaking out. If something so profound happened, we wouldn't be able to prepare for it. Let's say that we spotted alien ship coming towards us. And there's no way that we could really prepare for that. There's just nothing that we could do to really ready ourselves individually or as a group to prepare for such a momentous and groundbreaking shifting of how we view reality. So I don't think that we could prepare for that. And as far as there being an afterlife, I don't think we could prepare for that either. In fact, I don't think that anything we could do in this life could ever prepare us for some other type of reality. That reality is going to have to be introduced to us maybe in the same way that this reality was, little by little, and slowly we become aware of it or something. And even then, I don't know that we could really process it. I guess we would come to accept it, but it would take time. But there's just nothing that we could possibly hope to do now that would ever prepare us for then. For then isn't supposedly, according to most religions, but not all, like an infinite amount of existence. What the bleep would that be like? How could you hope to prepare for that? Now, the show The Good Place has them, struggling to get into the good place, and then they finally do, and it turns out it's not that good. And the only way to make it good is to give people a way to end existence. Which seems sad, but it's also poignant. That life only really has meaning when you can have closure to it. After you've done everything that there's to do, what is there left to do? Except not do anything more.
So, atheism, you can sleep in. This is a great message. I mean, wow. This is the message that teenagers have been looking for when struggling with faith, isn't it? Don't worry about it. Go back to bed. Don't want to go to school? Go back to sleep. Doesn't matter. I mean, what's really the point? I mean, you might as well enjoy life to its fullest potential and not worry about doing all those things that matter. I mean, why concern yourself with the spiritual side of things? I mean, just let's not even it. You know what? We're not even going to ignore that it's out there. We're going to say that it doesn't exist. And it's just till you go back to sleep, don't even worry about that stuff. It's too difficult.
There is a profound message to telling somebody that what it is they believe could be wrong. It's even more profound when they take that internally and begin to examine that possibility. It changes you in ways that my past self had no idea. It wasn't until I went through it that I knew what that was like. And if you listen to people that convert to religion stories, they talk about this experience. And I've listened to many deconversion stories, and there's an experience there. And we humans love to try to live in the shoes of others. We love to try to experience these things. We want to experience it for ourselves, but we also like to experience it from a voyeur standpoint. So what's interesting is the deconversion is often intellectual in nature, and the faith conversion is often emotional in nature. That there's something that was testable with the deconversion, but that there was something that the person couldn't explain with the faith conversion. So that's why they eventually just adopted faith. They just couldn't get an answer that was satisfactory. There is an amazing change when you say to somebody, you could be wrong. I could be wrong. We could all be wrong. And it takes a lot to challenge that and be willing and able to challenge your own beliefs. And this goes for atheists as well as theists, because we're just as susceptible to weird and wacky beliefs as the theists are. So we've got to be aware that that's still a thing that we have to contend with.
Wow! You mean I don't have to go to church? You mean I don't have to worry about praying? You mean I don't have to concern myself with dying and the afterlife?
I agree that you shouldn't worry about going to church or praying, but I disagree that you would have to worry about your walking off the mortal coil. You should make sure that you have both a living will and a actual will, that your wishes are known, so that should that time come, that people know what to do. Try to have life insurance if you can. But other than that, there's really nothing that can be done about that sort of thing, sadly. And as for an afterlife, again, there's no way that I think that we could actually prepare for that if it happens to be true. But there's a wide variety of religions out there, and this just kind of assumes that Infinite Hope picked the right one, or was actually kind of born into the right one. Man, he sure got lucky back in the day. He didn't know that he was going to deconvert, so I guess then he became not lucky, or like, did he become more? I don't believe in luck anyway, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, so we don't need to pray because that doesn't do anything. If you want the benefits of prayer, just meditate. That's the only thing that can be shown to have any actual benefit at all, is the meditation that you can that sometimes occurs in prayer. You can do that without the praying. You can just meditate. It actually does benefit you. Going to church, form a sense of community, but then there's other ways to do that. There's places to go and hang out, and groups that you could form and meet people that could also form a sense of community. So you don't need to worry about going to church either. Why would God need you to pray or go to church anyways? What benefit does that have for God? Well, it's supposed to be for you, right? Well, but then it doesn't really benefit you because you could do the same thing in other ways. So I think that the only reason that these things are encouraged is to keep you believing what you believe.
That's pretty good. And I can sound really smart when I talk about it because I can show proofs and turn to science and show that I'm a learned person by doing this.
You can honestly hear the venom that I had back then. I was so frustrated that there was proof to be had and I didn't have it. But I couldn't see that that's what it was. I couldn't see that I was mad at it. I couldn't see that I was frustrated at it. All I could do was to mock it and make fun of it. And fair enough, we mock religion sometimes as well. It's like, look at Scientology. How can they believe this nonsense? How can anyone believe any of these things? Well, because somebody else believes it. So that makes it compelling in a social way. And the more people that believe it, the more it seems like it's something believable. And maybe you're looking for something to believe in. That's why when you see a sign that says, we have the answers, well, that's great. To what? Well, they have the answers. To anything? Well, no, but to what you're looking for. Well, I didn't even know I was looking for but that's compelling. I want these answers. I want to understand things. And both cults and religion offer a way to know what's going on, even though they don't actually offer any way to know what's going on. All they can offer is a way to believe that you now know what's going on. Science is difficult. It's hard to do, it's hard to understand, it's hard to wrap your head around, depending on what it is. I mean, some science is easier than others, but it's hard work to actually have evidence for your claims. It's far easier to just believe. So I was angry. And the cognitive dissonance that kept me in check had full control over me. deconverting is overcoming that cognitive dissonance. So maybe if you that are listening to this video does believe in something, and you're finding it that you're angry at me, or that you're angry at this video, or that you're angry at atheists, maybe it's because that cognitive dissonance is something that you just can't get over.
I'm in charge, and there's no moral authority above me, controlling or guiding my life. So it's all me. If something bad happens, it's because I did it, or it's a mistake, it's an accident, it's a random chance.
The idea that there is no cosmic plan can be terrifying if all you've been told or come to believe is that there is one. But there isn't a plan. It's just you have to make a plan for your own self if you want to plan at all. And that may or may not go the way that you want. The world and the universe we live in is chaotic. There are some rules to it. There are some guiding structures. But those rules are made essentially by nature, in that the way that the universe is makes gravity a thing, so that if a piano does fall and it happens to hit your head, you're probably not going to have a good day because of that, if you still manage to live after that. Of course, if you didn't manage to live, then I would say that that's a pretty bad day. But yeah, there isn't any sort of plan like that. And wouldn't that be awful? Because that sort of says that there's a reason or a plan, that somebody is born into a life of starvation or something with all sorts of diseases. That's messed up. Now, as far as there being nothing to worry about, morally speaking, like you can do anything you want, well, you can do anything you want. What do you want to do that you're not doing right now, that you're holding back because you think that God's going to punish you if you do it? What is that thing? Well, do it then. You can always be forgiven, right? So perhaps it's the idea that the law might catch on and find you and put you in jail if you get caught. Of course, if you don't, then great. But you might feel incredibly guilty, or maybe you won't. But there's nothing that you can do to undo what's been done. So yeah, you have to live with those consequences that you perform or that you didn't do, and you have to live with that as well. There's a whole meta discussion of justice and punishment that could be had here as well, of what's the punishment for somebody doing something bad? And man, if there's a cosmic punishment, then that will just make everything okay. And yet, that's not really the Christian perspective. You're punished for everything already. Everything that you do, just about, is a sin. And you have to beg and plead for forgiveness, and then believe in these things, and then try to do the right thing to get in the good place, so to speak. But it's not really about behavior, because if that's all it was about, then you could just be a good person, and it wouldn't matter what you believed. And the emphasis is on belief. If you don't believe, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're screwed. Whereas if you do believe, well, maybe it doesn't matter how bad you are, because you can be forgiven. People that have done terrible, awful things have converted to Christianity and repented of their sins on death row. And it's like, okay, well, this serial killer that's killed however many bazillion people and tortured them and whatever else craziness, they're going to heaven. And you can't say, well, no, they're not. Well, no, they are. If anything is to believe in theology, but then again, it depends how you interpret the Bible, and that's a whole nother problem. But why do we want that person to be punished? Why don't we want them to be fixed and healed? That would be better, wouldn't it? But it wouldn't undo what they did. Now that would be a miracle. If there was a being capable of undoing the bad that had happened, that would be something that we would say, you need to do that. You need to undo this terrible thing, because it was bad. And if they didn't do that, if they said, nah, I'm not going to do it, I could do it, but I'm just not going to use that power, we would consider that immoral. So, in the end of the day, if your God is able to do something about the terrible things, but doesn't, then it is a terrible God.
What we should be teaching is how to ask questions.
Now there's something my past self and my current self still agree with. So good job, past self, for saying one thing that I agree with back then. But the rest of it, there's a lot to address, and I didn't address it all here because because I don't know, because of the wonderful things I do. Wait, what? I think that this whole thing has gotten to me. Not me versus me, but this just what's happening right now. It's like Deconverted Man is losing it or something. What could happen?